Good evening, this is Spanda. In the Metal Gear saga, several men called Snake appear. Even when you say Snake, it's not always the same person in each series, their personality may change. For brothers who've just been exposed to the Metal Gear series, I think there might be times when they get confused. Who really is the genuine Snake? How many are there? Are they all the same? If you're the one who's asking these questions this time, I'd like to introduce all the Snakes at once while unraveling the relationship between the Snake Clan and Life or Death. Also, if you try to understand everything about them all at once, your mind might get confused and your brain might feel like Rose's homemade food. Further, in order to understand the true narrative of the Metal Gear saga, there's a need to decipher the truth hidden behind the story. And here, depending on the player, the interpretation can differ by 180 degrees. Personally, I think that, including all the different understandings of Metal Gear that each of them forms, everything is the true reality, but today, I will leave all that background behind and keep it simple. Very simply, I hope that anyone who watches this video would be able to understand the relationship between those called Snakes, and only that, go forward hence, and I hope brethren who came before me would understand. We have discussed Snake's explanations in previous videos, but this time, we'll keep it simpler and easier to understand. I'll be your opponent, Spanda. Please enjoy it right till the end. First, let's have a look at all the Snakes. There's a total of 7 characters referred to as Snake in the Metal Gear series. From left to right, Solid Snake, Old Snake, Liquid Snake, Solidus Snake, Naked Snake, Venom Snake, Raiden. First of all, let's remember that X-Snake is not his real name, it's his code name. And in the case of Raiden, in his first appearance in Metal Gear Solid 2, there's a scene where he's briefly codenamed Snake. However, shortly after that, he changes his codename to Raiden and is never referred to as Snake again. So for Raiden, remember how awful his wife's cooking is and that he's a handsome guy, and then you can forget about him being Snake this time. Now there's 6 remaining Snakes, but some of them are actually the same person. That's Solid Snake and Old Snake. Old Snake is just Solid Snake as an old man. Make sure to remember. We'll get into the details later. So there are actually 5 Snakes in total. We're good so far, right? Now, let's talk about the first important character of the series, this Solid Snake. Solid Snake is in the first Metal Gear game. He's the protagonist of the second Metal Gear 2, Solid Snake, the third Metal Gear Solid, and the final game in the series, Metal Gear Solid 4. You will find him serving as the main character in all 4 works. To distinguish him from other Snakes, the key points are the presence or absence of a bandana and whiskers, and whether both eyes are open. However, Old Snake, who has become a grandpa, has grown a beard. When you become a grandpa, everyone grows a beard. It can't be helped. Additionally, it may seem like he's wearing an eye patch, but this is called Solid Eye. It's a state-of-the-art, all-purpose goggle developed by a character named Otacon, who is Snake's best friend. He usually removes this, and this is what he usually looks like. Keep this in mind as it often comes up in tricky questions. There are also application problems like this. This is also an easy mistake to make, but Solid Snake can be found here. The one on the right is wearing an eye patch. In the case of Old Snake, it's either the bandana or both eyes are open. Whichever of these conditions is met, that's Solid Snake. Also, he's a heavy smoker and often seen smoking cigarettes in movie scenes. That's another characteristic. Okay, right? So let's move on to the next one. Solid Snake appears in the first Metal Gear game as a rookie member of a special forces unit called the Foxhound in the United States. Metal Gear, a new nuclear weapon that is being developed in secret by a mercenary dispatch company called Outer Heaven. The story goes that a US government client who senses this leads Solid Snake to go undercover on his own. Ultimately, there was a lot going on behind the scenes. He is the commander-in-chief of the Foxhound. He was also a senior officer of Solid and sang with the legendary warrior. It turns out that he is a person called Big Boss. At the end of the battle to the death, Solid Snake defeats Big Boss and the story ends. The enemy's boss was actually his boss. Now here's the Metal Gear story in 3 seconds. Let's remember, the enemy's boss was actually his boss. It's okay, right? And the second film, Metal Gear 2, Solid Snake. Here, the story unfolds that Big Boss, who was supposed to be defeated in the first film, is alive. Solid infiltrates enemy territory to thwart his ambitions again. At the end, you shoot down the Big Boss you defeated, and the story ends. It was a former boss who was defeated by the enemy's boss. This is the story of Metal Gear 2 Solid Snake in 3 seconds. It was a former boss who was defeated by the enemy's boss. Now the two works that I just talked about are MSX2. Edition is said to be Metal Gear. This is a rough story of Metal Gear 2 Solid Snake. Solid Snake becomes the master and thwarts Big Boss's ambitions. There's only one snake in the game, so it's really easy to understand. You must be mistaken. The story of the first 2 films isn't like that, and Big Boss is a man. He and his brothers are going out for their throats. I understand. But I'll explain that as well, so for now, not yet. We're not finished yet, and I'll tell you. Now, some of you may be wondering about it here, but in these 2 films, the mastermind is a former senior officer of Solid called Big Boss. That's right, that famous Big Boss. When it comes to the Metal Gear series, there may be many siblings who think of Big Boss. Even if you don't know much about Metal Gear, you've probably heard of Big Boss. This will gradually become clearer from the next game, starting with the next game with the name Solid in the title. From this point on, the story becomes more and more complex, with more and more snakes intertwined. With so many titles, it's hard to know which one to play first. The story seems difficult, and it's hard to get your hands on Metal Gear. Please be assured that all of your brother's worries will be solved from now on. Are you ready? So let's move on. Metal Gear Solid is the 3rd game in the series. In this game, the protagonist is also Solid Snake. A new snake is introduced in this story. That's him, Liquid Snake. Liquid is a character who appears as the final boss in this game. For some reason, Solid has the same snake name as Solid. This is where Solid and Liquid, 2 snakes, come into the picture, and their relationship becomes clear. The surprising relationship between Big Boss and Big Boss, who served as the final boss in the 2 MSX2 editions, is also evident in this Metal Gear Solid. It's exciting, isn't it? Let's start with the explanation. In 2005, a terrorist act breaks out. The mastermind of this terror is Liquid Snake. He and his terror group members call themselves Sons of Big Boss. He has asked the government for the body of Big Boss, who was overthrown and recovered by Solid. If this demand is not met in 24 hours, Liquid threatens to launch a nuclear attack. Solid Snake is once again tasked with handling this situation. He must quell the terrorism and prevent a nuclear attack. What will happen to Solid? Yes, this is the story of Metal Gear Solid. It's getting a bit complicated, isn't it? A new snake named Liquid has appeared and he's demanding the body of Big Boss. To stop this, our protagonist Solid Snake infiltrates enemy territory. Simply put, this is a story of a showdown between Solid and Liquid. As the story progresses, it becomes clear that Big Boss was Solid's real father. This is a fact revealed in Metal Gear Solid for the first time, and Solid says that it was told to him directly by Big Boss. Yes, Solid learned this in the previous Metal Gear 2, Solid Snake. There was no such expression in the game, but Solid was directly spoken to by Big Boss at this time. In other words, Big Boss, who was your former boss and the enemy's boss, was your father. This is an amazing fact. After all, the person I defeated was my father. And further, the shocking facts continue. Towards the end of the story, Liquid reveals that we were created using Big Boss's body cells, the result of a plan to clone. In other words, they are siblings. He defeated his father with his own hands, and now he is trying to compete with his brother in front of him. What a family drama. Metal Gear Solid reveals important facts that form the basis of the rest of the series' story. Liquid Snake then dies in the various disposal facilities on Shadow Moses Island, where the story takes place. This completes the mission and continues the story on to the next installment. Well, various shocking facts and more facts have been revealed, but let's review them here. There are two important points in this game. Liquid Snake is a twin brother to Solid Snake, and Big Boss is Solid's father. The enemy's boss was his brother. You can see this in 3 seconds in Metal Gear Solid. The enemy's boss was his own brother. And let's also make some fixes to the previous Metal Gear 2 game. Change it from the former boss who defeated the enemy's parent ball to the enemy's parent ball was your own father. Gradually, the relationship between the snakes became clearer. And about Liquid Snake, he is blonde and prefers to wear a coat over his naked body. It is often used on this channel. Not yet, not over yet is a quote from Liquid. It represents his tenacity. Apart from this Metal Gear Solid, he also appears in Metal Gear Solid 5 and the Phantom Pain. Here, Liquid appears as a boy. In other words, the story is set in the past. Even here, the blonde hair and the coat over the naked body are present. It would be a good idea to pay attention to these to identify him. He is Solid's real brother, born as a twin. This fact was hidden. Being the son of Big Boss and a product of a cloning project, unfortunately, Liquid found out at a young age. Moreover, Liquid dies in this game, Metal Gear Solid. Later works feature a character resembling his personality, a dandy uncle known as Liquid Ocelot, but note, this is not a snake. There is only one person called Liquid Snake. Liquid died in Metal Gear Solid, ending his life here. Additionally, at the very end, the existence of another snake, Solidus, is mentioned. The relationship with Solidus will be unveiled in my own Metal Gear Solid 2. So far, so good, right? It's quite a hefty explanation, so if you're seeking a better understanding, the best recommendation is to play the game or watch the character descriptions on this channel. So let's move on. Metal Gear Solid 2. Here, a new snake called Solidus Snake is introduced and serves as the final boss of the game. 2009. A massive terrorist attack occurs once again. The culprit is Solidus Snake, a man bearing the name of the third snake. He holds the US president hostage and demands $300 billion in cash. Raiden is assigned to defuse this situation. In Metal Gear Solid 2, the protagonist is Raiden, and Solid Snake appears as Raiden's support. What's newly revealed in this story is that a man named Solidus Snake was born at the same time as the clone project that created solids and liquids. It's a complete clone of Big Boss. Solidus, like Solid and Liquid, was born using Big Boss's body cells, and his father is the same Big Boss as the two. Since Solidus is a complete clone or duplicate of Big Boss, it may seem a little strange to refer to him as a father. However, in the film, Solidus refers to Big Boss as his father and Solid as his brother. This is where interpretations diverge, but on this channel, Solidus is just as easy to understand as Solid and Liquid. Unlike other snakes, Solidus only appears in this one main work, and the corpse is used well in later series. Even within the Snake Clan, they are treated as unfortunate, and they tend to be overshadowed by the fact that they appear less. Snake was at the bottom of the popularity poll on the channel in the past. It's safe to say that he was the closest thing to Big Boss, but he wasn't blessed with that vein. What he is characterized by is the eye patch of his left eye. Among the snakes, the only one that distinguishes them is that they wear an eye patch on their left eye. Also, if you look at the body, you can see that it has two tentacles extending from the enhanced clothing, a manipulator called a snake arm, and two swords. As a result of the fight to the death, Solidus was shot down by Raiden. This work also reveals the existence of a great darkness lurking behind the world that triggered Solidus's terrorist attacks. We are getting closer to the whole truth. Now, in Metal Gear Solid 2, the identity of Solidus Snake has been revealed. And this is what Metal Gear Solid 2 looks like in 3 seconds. The story of Solidus being defeated by a handsome man. The story of Solidus being defeated by a handsome man. Solidus, like Solid and Liquid, is a duplicate created from the body cells of the legendary warrior Big Boss and claims to be his son. In other words, all three of the people we've introduced so far are the person called Big Boss became the original and was created to recreate Big Boss, and he is living a tragic life. So who is Big Boss, who has so little information other than being a father of 3? Many of the mysteries surrounding him are solved, but they actually start with Metal Gear Solid 3. In this Metal Gear Solid 3, we depart from the previous timeline and the past of Big Boss in the 1960s is depicted. In other words, the 3 snakes that have appeared thus far will not appear. Let's put that in the back of our minds for a moment. And from here, the story of Big Boss's young life, when he was called Naked Snake, is told. Yes, one of the 5 snakes we introduced to you in the beginning, Naked Snake. He was the man who would later be called Big Boss and the father of 3 children. It's getting interesting. Now it's time for Naked Snake, the original of all snakes. When the topic of Metal Gear comes up in general, Naked Snake is often referred to as Big Boss, so who is Snake? If you say that there may be many siblings who sense Solid Snake. Snake, famous for his participation in Smash Bros, is modeled after Solid Snake. However, the most popular of all the snakes of all time is Big Boss. The story of Big Boss, which had been veiled until then, was fleeting but beautiful, and it spilled a lot of Pepsinex from the eyes of many people. His epic story is the secret of his great popularity. In the next Snake story, Big Boss and Naked Snake appear. Before Naked Snake became known as Big Boss, there were several major incidents, two of which, the virtuous mission and Operation Snake Eater, are depicted in Metal Gear Solid 3. In this work, the distortions of the era created by the Cold War and the tragic task given to the boss, who is Naked Snake's death, are revealed. At the end of the story, Naked Snake accomplishes his mission to eliminate the boss, the death he believed and continued to love, with his own hands. This is a story that really sticks with you no matter how many times you see it, but there is also a scene in the ending where Naked Snake is given the title of Big Boss. By the way, the meaning of Big Boss is a person who looks up a dictionary and commands at the top of an organization. It's a word used by people in positions like the commander of a military or the president of a company. The fact that he took the life of the boss, who was his own death, and Naked Snake, who knew the real purpose and self-protection of the country hidden behind it, leaves the military after this and works as a free mercenary. Behind Naked Snake being called Big Boss is a sad past of killing his beloved mentor. The boss, who is said to be another protagonist of this work, is also one of the popular figures like Big Boss. At the beginning of Metal Gear Solid 3, Naked Snake does not wear an eye patch. If you don't have an eye patch, you don't have a bandana. The bandana was handed down to him from the boss in the first half of the story, and he starts wearing an eye patch in the second half of the story, when he gets shot in the right eye. From then on, his right eye patch and bandana become Big Boss's trademarks, which, as I discussed at the beginning of the video, set him apart from the other snakes. And this story, while it jumps around in terms of timeline, continues with Peace Walker and Metal Gear Solid 5. His main appearances begin with Metal Gear Solid 3, followed by Peace Walker, and then Metal Gear Solid 5, Ground Zeroes. He features prominently in all three games, playing the protagonist. Now, the fourth introduction, Naked Snake. Do you understand? Actually, he was the man known as Big Boss. This work reveals Big Boss's past in detail for the first time. As for his future sons, Solid, Liquid, and Solidus, there are no clear mentions in the story. The story details why Naked Snake came to be called Big Boss. Information about his sons will be revealed in later works. At this time, just remember that Big Boss and Naked Snake are the same person. If you keep this point in mind, you'll be fine. And then there's Metal Gear Solid 3, which I'll explain in 3 seconds. Regarding this, the mission was to kill the beloved. I already had a tagline, which was more than this. I thought a lot about it, but I decided to make it simple. Big Boss is a villain who isn't naked. Big Boss is a villain who isn't naked. Well, I have nothing more to say. Next up is Metal Gear Solid 5, The Phantom Pain, featuring the fifth snake. The story takes place in 1984, 20 years since Metal Gear Solid 3. During this time, Peace Walker, Metal Gear Solid 5, and Ground Zeroes exist as a matter of life and death. Both are primarily focused on Big Boss, since there is no new snake. We will skip them in this commentary. However, both are masterpieces, as you will see when Panda explains them in each video. There's no doubt that both are masterpieces. If you're interested, we encourage you to try it out for yourself. Okay, so let's continue. Next up is the Venom snake. In order of release, the series will be the last Metal Gear Solid 5 and the Phantom Pain. This is where the Venom Snake comes in. He's a pretty complicated story, and this may be the most confusing part of the video. But rest assured that I will chew as much as I can and explain it slowly. Also, if you're already confused by the long video time, please subscribe to our channel and see you at another time. The story is 1975 years. Big Boss was attacked by an unidentified organization, and the helicopter that was appearing in the scene was blown up and he fell into a flood state. During that time, 9 years. It also became an internet meme. Calm Down was born from this work. Big Boss woke up from 9 years of floodwater, but if the news of his awakening leaks to the outside world, he is in danger of being targeted again. There, Zero, who belonged to Big Boss in Metal Gear Solid 3 and was also the former commander of the Fox Squad, told us the starting point. I propose to make his Shadow Warrior, and the one who was chosen as the Phantom of the Big Boss was the best of the mercenary forces led by Big Boss at the time. It was a medic. The medic was in the helicopter that blew up with Big Boss, and he was also in a long flood. Imprinting the memory of Big Boss with powerful suggestion on him while he is asleep, the medic thinks he is Big Boss and wakes up. After that, he will take command of another Big Boss and a new mercenary force, the Diamond Dogs. The story depicted in Phantom Pain is not Big Boss, but the story of Venom Snake. However, the whole story is revealed at the end, and the story up to that point does not explicitly mention that he is a Kagamusha. This was a big gimmick for the players, and many of the brothers were surprised by the fact that it was revealed at the end. This work, it also suggests that the Big Boss, who appeared as the final boss in Metal Gear, the first game of the MSX2 version, was actually Venom. The Big Boss, who was defeated by Solid Snake and thought to be alive in Metal Gear 2, is the real Big Boss. The person he first thought to have buried is actually Venom, the Shadow Warrior. This shocking truth was revealed 28 years after the first Metal Gear. This added truth to the story from Metal Gear Solid 5 to the original Metal Gear. In the Phantom Pain, Eli, Liquid Snake from his childhood, also appeared. I told you when commenting on Liquid under my original name, but he already knows the secret of his career at this point. He's aware that he was the result of Big Boss's cloning project, and he harbors intense resentment for Big Boss because of this fact. Of course, Eli doesn't know about the Shadow Warrior plan, so in Phantom Pain, he vents his severe hatred for Venom. Being able to see Eli's rebellious nature is one of the charms of Phantom Pain. There are two most important points during this period. Venom Snake was Big Boss's Phantom or Shadow Warrior and first generation. The final boss of Metal Gear is not Big Boss himself, but Venom Snake. It's worth noting that the original final boss of the MSX2 version is an issue that Venom often faces, so it's worth paying attention to. One of the features that distinguishes him is that it looks like a large horn extending from his forehead, which is not found in other snakes. And Metal Gear Solid 5, which you can see in 3 seconds, is actually Venom the Shadow Warrior of Big Boss. In fact, Venom was the Phantom of Big Boss, Big Boss, Big Boss. Let's also revamp the Metal Gear commentary, as the enemy boss is actually Venom. Now that we've got 5 snakes, let's sort it out one more time, and you know the relationship between each snake, right? First of all, Naked Snake is the original that is the origin of all snakes, and is commonly called Big Boss. He has an eye patch on his right eye, a beard, and a bandana, and is a soldier who was called a legendary mercenary and has a great deal of charisma and influences many people. We will look at the relationship between each of them based on him. Solid Snake, a former member of Fox, and a man who has been called a legendary hero. It is created by a cloning project that utilizes Big Boss's body cells and the relationship between Big Boss and parent and child. Another snake whose bandana was born with Solid through the trademark Liquid Snake clone project. Big Boss and Big Boss learned the secret of their relationship and birth at an early age. And since then, they have been hating Big Boss. Blonde is a distinctive feature. And it's easy to say that we're not done yet. But it was created in a completely different way than Solid and Liquid during the Solidus Snake clone project. Big Boss's relationship with Big Boss, a clone that becomes perfect, is characterized by the fact that the parent and child have an eye patch on their left eye. Venom's snake is not genetically or blood related to Big Boss, unlike the other Big Boss who was born as Big Boss's shadow warrior and the only one who was born before Snake. However, he has been subconsciously implanted with the memories of Big Boss and is mentally closer to Big Boss than any snake. The horns on the head are distinctive, and the existence of the Big Boss has led to the birth of other snakes. And this series of snakes has taken a long time. All those who have had the name of the serpent, who have continued the epic family quarrels that engulf the world, have lived tragic lives. It's like a curse that engulfs the humans around it. And the end of the curse of these snakes will be the final work in the chronological order. Metal Gear Solid 4. This marks the end of the entire story and the conclusion of the Metal Gear saga. The snake that appears in the last class is the Old Snake. It is an old form of Solid Snake, and its mystery is unraveled in the film. So thank you for waiting. This will be the next and last lesson. Let's get started. Old Snake, the man who puts an end to the curse of the serpents. The Solid Snake has been transformed by a rapid aging process. In the final game, Metal Gear Solid 4, all the foreshadowing will be collected and various mysteries will be solved. The story is 2014 years. Snake, who has been suffering from an unknown aging phenomenon, receives a request to eliminate a man. Elimination of Liquid Ocelot. Liquid. Yes, it is the second serpent and the name of Solid's twin brother. However, the Liquid Ocelot in this story is not the real Liquid, as we talked about in the second case. A dandy uncle named Ocelot plays Liquid through powerful self-suggestion. The truth is that he does not have the blood of a serpent. Solid is scrambling to eliminate ocelots in various places, but in the midst of this, his own aging phenomenon, you can see that it was intentionally set short to prevent the leakage of the technology created by Big Boss's alter ego. His aging was not caused by illness or viruses, but by his longevity. Furthermore, it becomes clear that the virus rampant in Solid's body may evolve into a murderous virus, commencing a rampage and killing indiscriminately those around it. Following Ocelot's request for extermination, Solid Snake attempts to end his own life before he transforms into a walking weapon of murder. At that moment, none other than Big Boss himself appeared before him. After being defeated by Solid, he is saved by worshippers of Big Boss and resurrected using the bodies of the already deceased Liquid Snake and Solidus Snake. A final moment between Big Boss and Solid Snake as father and son. This serves as an appropriate conclusion to Metal Gear Solid, bringing the story to an end. Now, you understand the relations among all the snakes, don't you? Each series has its own major theme, but this time we opted to exclude them and provide an explanation that unfolds only the connections among the snakes. The Metal Gear saga is brimming with captivating characters and an epic storyline. I would be delighted if those who are even slightly interested in this work become motivated to delve more into it. And for those who have made it this far, we assure a perfect score in tomorrow's test. We cover many other Metal Gear titles on this channel, so feel free to check out our other videos whenever you're free. If you like, we have also opened our membership to the True Brothers. We hope you can join us in making this channel even more thrilling. That concludes the session. Thank you very much for watching until the end.